Hello and welcome to today's video. Today is my second update for my Pan Those Eyeshadows project pan. You're probably very familiar with this project pan, but it was started by Alexy a long time ago. All the information about it is listed in the description box below. And I have a very exciting update for you today, so why don't we go ahead and get into it. Alright, as we get started, let me remind you what I have going in this project. I've been working on 6 shadows this past month, and I have pan on 3 of them today. I'm going to show you the 3 more boring ones, the ones that don't have pan first. And I think I'll start with my Truly Madly Deeply palette from Colourpop. This one was one that I rolled in at the introduction of this project, and I was complaining last update that this thing was going so slowly. I have a little bit better progress on it today, but no pan, obviously. I'll show you a little swatch of it. This is kind of like the most color I could get out of it. It is definitely a transition shade, and I have a problem, like I don't think it builds very well. Like some other shades in my collection, like Anastasia Beverly Hills shades, they tend to, like I can sometimes put them on a little bit more sheer and build up the depth with them. This one kind of goes on one color and then stays one color. If you like pile it on top of each other, it doesn't really get much deeper or anything. So I find this one to be a little bit limiting. I have been trying to use it all over my eye this past month, trying to get some progress on it. And of course at the introduction, it was pretty much brand new. Last update, we had a little bit of a dip starting to show in person. It showed a little bit better than it did on camera. And today we are looking like this. I think it looks much better, and honestly, I have to give it up to the brush that I was using. And I'll show you that brush. This is the Defining Crease brush from Real Techniques. It's a very pointy brush. I find that this works better not only for creating a little like divot in the product, but also like because it's not the most pigmented shade. When I go in with like a more dense brush in my crease, I get a little bit better payout than when I go in with like a really fluffy brush. It's easier to build it up with this. And again, it doesn't really build so much, but it does get a little bit better pigmentation when I use more dense brushes with it. So again, I think that's why I have much better kind of little dip going. And I think that I'm gonna keep this in one more month and see if I can't get pan in it by next month. If I can't get pan in it by next month, I might just go ahead and roll it out. But so far, I think we're gonna keep it in. Okay, the second shadow I'm gonna show you comes from my Night and Day Revolution Pro palette. This was one I rolled in last update. It's a little bit more cool tone of a shade. Hopefully you can see that right there. I love this transition shade so much. I'm actually wearing it today. I think it's one of the most perfect cool tone kind of shades I have in my collection. Now at the introduction, it was pretty much brand new because this palette I only got in September and I haven't had the chance to use it the most. I've used it at least 10 times, but not approaching 20 or anything like that. But when I show you the pan today, it's gonna look very different because I ended up dropping this palette last month, and wouldn't you know that the only shadow that ended up showing damage was this shade. So I had to end up repressing it, and you'll see it doesn't look very used right now because what I did is the jar that I repressed it in, this jar here that I used to like mix the alcohol up in, I've gone ahead and like tried to use the product out of here first. So I'm gonna continue doing that. So this only looks swatched because I literally just used it to swatch it. Before that, you could see the paper towel indentation in it. But yeah, it was the only shade in this whole palette that broke. And luckily I was able to repress it, because if I wasn't gonna be able to repress it, I would have been devastated because I really genuinely love this transition shade so much. But yeah, again, because this is a baked shade and there's so much product in this one, I'm just gonna try to use this one 20 times and I'm gonna roll it out. And my usage so far is that I've used it 8 times. So I'm gonna try to really focus on this the next month. I was so focused on a couple other shades that you'll see that I didn't get to use this as much as I wanted to this past month. Okay, my third shade comes from my Sultry palette. Again, this was a palette that I rolled in last update, and so it's only been in the project for 1 month. It pretty much looked a lot, well, it wasn't brand new, but it didn't really look like it had much wear on it. This palette being discontinued and being such a high priced palette, I find myself using it so light-handedly. So far I've used this 11 times, but you'll be able to see compared to the intro footage that we don't have a huge dip in this yet, and I honestly don't know if I'll try to hit pan on it. I'm probably gonna end up rolling this out at 20 uses just because it being a discontinued palette, there's a little bit of me that like gets a little panicky about hitting pan in it, even though I know that's so silly. So I don't know, I'm gonna see when we get to 20 if I feel like I can still reach for it a little bit more, I will. And I realized I didn't show you a swatch of it, but it's this beautiful kind of like bronzy gold shade. It depends on like what I pair it with. I can make it turn a little or pull a little bit more gold if I pair it with deeper tones, but if I pair it with lighter tones, it pulls a little bit more bronze. But I really do love this shade, and it's been really nice to wear with some red lipstick lately. So yeah, I'm gonna try to use this, you know, all the way to 20 uses, but I might not decide to hit like pan on this one. We'll see. Okay, we're gonna finally get into the 3 pans that I've hit this month. The first one comes from my Sigma Enchanted palette. I was working on the shade called Moonglade. It's like a pinky purpley shimmer shade in this palette. It does not have like glitter flecks. Some of the other shimmers in here have beautiful glitter flecks in them. So it was a little bit more, I was challenged a little bit more in the beginning trying to understand how to use it. At the intro, it was brand new pretty much. At the first update, we had a little bit of a dip in it. And today we have some nice little baby pan right there. And I ended up using this quite often as a lid shade and as an inner corner shade. And again, I just really am excited to have pan in this one. This is a swatch of it right there. And I find that even though this was a brand new palette to me, this shade in particular wasn't a favorite for me. So it didn't really produce that like anxiety feeling that I'm mentioning when I talk about some of the other shades in my collection. This one, because it was one that I was like, you know, my favorite, I didn't mind hitting pan on it. Now, if it were like maybe this green shade or like this shade here, I might have felt a little bit differently about it, but so far I'm okay with it. And it feels good to have been able to reach for this a little bit. Now I did struggle, and I am still struggling a little bit in this project with the fact that I end up pulling, like I'm trying to use all the shades in this project, and then I feel like I have such a beautiful like color scheme here that I don't reach for the rest of it, and I feel a little bit awkward about that. I think I need to figure out a better system to be able to use other parts of this palette, because I feel like even though I reached for this 22 times, I didn't really get to understand the rest of the palette like I would like to, because I was so focused on hitting pan in this one shade. That's a little bit of a drawback for me with this like project in particular. But so far, I guess like I'm okay. I just maybe need to, if you have any tips or tricks in the comment section, please leave them for me, because I'm a little bit on the struggle bus with that one. Okay, the next palette I was working on was my Dosa Colors Friendcation palette, and I was working on the shade Try Me. At the intro, it was probably looked a little used, but not too much. This was a shade in particular that I liked but didn't love in this palette. It's probably my least favorite shimmer shade in this palette, and so that, therefore, again, I didn't really mind hitting pan on it. Last month I had a decent dip in it, but today I finally have pan. This one was so freaking hard to hit pan on. I use this so much, and I find that it's a very thick metallic formula, so it's a little bit crumbly, and it was a little bit of a pain in the butt to hit pan on. Every time that I would try to like dig in and like get enough for my lid, I felt like I would end up like breaking up the product, or it was so crumbly that I would have to then use my finger and use like the outside of it rather than being able to kind of use it down in the middle, which made it last a little bit longer. And honestly, you can see that this is just a very intense red shade, and it ended up either turning most of my looks red or pink. I could kind of shear it out a little bit and make it a little bit more pink, but at the end of this one, like towards the end of being able to hit pan, I was so tired of wearing the same red eyeshadow look that I was so excited to roll this one out. So this one is definitely one that I'm excited to put away for a little bit. And I almost forgot to say, I ended up using this one 21 times till hit pan, and then this Lorac one was forever until I hit pan. I ended up using this 31 times to be able to hit pan in this one. At the intro, it was maybe had a little bit of progress showing in it, but today you can see a little bit of tiny baby pan there. I've been trying to reach for this one to set my eyelids for 2 months now, and for whatever reason, I guess because I'm using a fluffier brush, it's just going more slowly. As you can see, the dip in that one is like definitely bigger. But yeah, I am so excited to see pan in this palette, and I'm glad that this palette looks a little bit more loved than it did a year ago, because this is one that I actually really do enjoy this palette, even though it's super monochromatic and kind of like blah. It's not the most exciting palette. I find that it's such a good quality palette that I want it to look used and abused. So I'm actually kind of hoping that we can eventually roll in another shade from this palette. I'd love to work on another shade from this palette. So you might not be able to see it very well, but I've tried to swatch that shade over there. But this was the color story we were working with over the past month, and these are the last 3 shades left that I have not hit pan on, so we need to roll in 3 new shades this month. Okay, as I pull up my random number generator, I think what I'm gonna do is pull 1 more month from my cool tone spreadsheet only, and then next month I'll kind of open it up to all the shadows that I own, so that we can kind of just, I just want to, I've been again enjoying cool tones so much, and it's still kind of dark and gloomy out, and I don't feel the need to like wear tons of warm tones yet. So I'm gonna try, I do have some like neutral to warm tones in this list, so let's go ahead. I have 213 shadows to choose from, and we have 154. The next one is number 7. And then the last shade is gonna be number 95. All right, the 3 shades are again these palettes. I think I might re-roll for one of these. You'll see why in a second. The first one was this Solmåne palette from Oden's Eye, and it was the shade Soul here, which is this kind of like warm yellow matte or orangey yellow matte shade. So that's that shade swatched out, and it's very warm. Honestly, I hadn't taken out the shades in this one, the warm shades that I wanted to keep in the warm column only, but I think it's okay. I think I'll go ahead and try to work on this and use it at least 20 times. This is such a new palette to me. This is probably my newest palette in my collection, that there's a part of me that goes, if I don't hit pan in 20 uses, then I'll go ahead and roll it out. But I do want to play a little bit more with this palette, so it is a good chance for me to kind of reach for it more, so I'm okay rolling this one into the project. Now the other 2 shades, let me show you them. They were from the Dosa Colors Friendcation palette in the shade Try Me, this kind of like champagne goldy glittery shade, and the other one was Primavera from Modern Renaissance, and I already have the Sultry gold, and then both of these are so daggum similar that I'm going to only pick one of them. I think I'd rather work on Primavera in this palette. So what I'm going to do is put this one out and re-roll for this one, because I'd rather, this is an older palette and I'd rather hit pan in it. And again, I have like a goldy bronze shade. I have a goldy bronze shade. I don't necessarily want another gold or like 3 golds to work on. Let's try this one more time. 123. Okay, with that roll, I kind of got my wish. I have this Lorac Pro palette again, but I have the shade Truffle down here that is like this deep, deep, dark brown, deepening, like metallic-y kind of shade. It's really more of a satin shade. So that's a swatch of Truffle right there, and then I still need to swatch Primavera 1 second. Okay, and you can see Primavera right there. This is such a neutrally warm color story. It's so, so boring. I don't know what to do. So there's a part of me that wants to roll in something more, or try to roll in something more colorful, but a lot of what I have here is very like neutral palettes. A lot of my bigger palettes are more colorful and they're at home in storage. So part of me goes, okay, yeah, I could roll something in, but I think what I'll do is kind of keep this more neutral color story or more warm to neutral color story. And I'll use this as an opportunity to wear pops of color on my lips. I've been really wanting to do that anyways, and this is kind of the perfect color story to do that. So the eyeshadow looks that I pair with this, or that I show with this video, probably won't be that exciting next month, but at least I'll have a chance to kind of really rotate through my lip collection, which I really, really want to do and need to do. So we don't have a ton of variety this month, but I think that's okay, and we'll just see what happens. All right, now we're gonna quickly go through the looks from this past month that I have. I don't have a lot of variety. Again, it was a very kind of monochromatic color story, as you can see. So I'll kind of start with this one. I ended up trying to focus on this palette first. This was the first one that I hit. Well, actually, the Lorac one was the first one that I hit pan in. I think it was like literally like the next 2 times it took me to use it to hit pan in it. But that shade was such a like transition shade, a very, very light one that you can't even see it. So I'm not including it in any looks. But this one was the next one that I kind of focused on to be able to hit pan and move it out. And I used it again kind of like with some of these cooler tones. Loam was one of the ones that I reached for quite a bit to try to get like a little bit of use out of the other side of the palette. So I ended up using it as like a lid shade, and I've reached for it a couple times as an inner corner shade paired with, I think it was Metamorphosis was one of the ones that I've tried to pair it with. I don't know if I have a look, but I know I wore Plume once, and again, I used Moonglade as an inner corner, and I think it was like, you know, not too many more uses before I was able to hit pan in this one. And another time I did use this palette was to reach for Cosmos, and I wanted to try to mix it in with the red in here. I know it sounds kind of funny, but it reminded me of like a Christmas combination, and I wasn't living in the house that day. So I did try to use this kind of like in all over my lid, and then I put the Cosmos shade, and it ended up looking more like blackened or like a deepening shade rather than like a green shade. So I just was already reaching, I think, for this as an inner corner shade, and then I paired it with this too. And of course for this palette, I ended up using it a little bit more all over the lid again, just trying to use it up. That, you know, being able to wear it all over your lid uses a good bit of product, even though it's not the most like exciting shade to wear. And then I also ended up pairing this palette quite a bit with the Sultry palette, and I tried to mix in steampunk. So I ended up kind of doing like a gradient, like goldy bronze to red on the outside with this palette a good bit. And once I hit pan in the Dosa Colors shade, then I was able to just focus on this, and I did pair it quite a bit with my Truly Madly Deeply palette. And again, not the most colorful, like exciting kind of looks created, but one of the looks that I created this past month that you'll see in another video is this shade here. I used Poodle, well, I used the like transition shade that I've been working on, and then I used Poodle on my outer corner, and then I used Steampunk on my lid, and then I cut my crease with like a glitter, and I love the way that look came out, and a lot of you like complimented me in the video I was wearing it in. But yeah, this one was a really fun, it was nice to have that pop of color. I need to try to do that a little bit more because when I did that, I enjoyed it. And lastly, this past month, I did get to wear this a little bit with my favorite shade to go to in here is this one down here, this like Pat McGrath dupe special shade. It's such a pretty shade. I don't know if you'll be able to see it very well. Such a gorgeous shade, and I did end up pairing that quite a bit with this. I love this shade with like this taupe in my crease and then a bright pink lip. Like, absolute favorite look that I do with this palette. And also because like this shade is so good, like a good cool tone transition shade, I'm wearing it today with a Stila glitter that is getting a little dry, and I overly hydrated it, so it's a little bit creasy today. But I have a feeling that I'm going to be reaching a little bit more often for some cool tone shades in my collection. So perhaps, even though this isn't again the most exciting color story, maybe I can get some use out of some parts of my collection that I feel like I haven't gotten to rotate through as much as usual because I am doing this project. So maybe this is a blessing in disguise this month. We'll see. But yeah, that's kind of it for today's video. Make sure you say hello in the comments. Let me know what you think, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.